So my initial plan was to do a full-blown reaction to this trailer, but then I thought to myself, what's the point? People are going to hear what they want to hear anyway, regardless of what I say, regardless of how well thought out my stance is. I'll still just get met with a barrage of responses that sound a little bit like this. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Or why don't you wait for the movie before you judge it? I'm going to give my brief thoughts on the trailer overall at the end of the video, but a majority of this video is going to focus on one aspect of the trailer in particular, one scene in particular, one scene that actually sums up everything that I talk about on this channel perfectly. That being, if you see something in a movie or a trailer that legitimately doesn't make sense to you, you should speak up, because you never know who's listening. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Ladies and gentlemen, we currently live in a world where fanboys have infiltrated every aspect of film discussion to the point that you can't even have a rational conversation most times about anything nerd culture related. Every little thing that you bring up, nitpick or not, is always going to be met with someone making excuses for it, or even worse, calling you toxic for pointing it out. But every once in a while, the people who question things, the people who dare to think for themselves, are validated.
Jesus f***ing Christ, it's about time!
Everyone remembers the Sonic the Hedgehog movie situation where fans reacted unkindly to the Sonic character design featured in the trailer. Now, I'm sure that those criticisms were met with pushback as well from people online, because let's face it, a shill has got a shill. But that doesn't negate the fact that the studio and creative team behind the Sonic movie heard those criticisms and addressed them. And guess what? It was all initiated by fan criticism. And not just any fan criticism, it was criticism of a trailer, of a promotional image. What's the world coming to? What this told everyone is that it might not happen in every situation, but in some situations, criticism still does work. Nitpicking even works. Sometimes it pays to not be so complacent as a consumer. Fast forward to 2025, and unfortunately a lot of people haven't learned their lesson, because we still have people out in full force bending over backwards, telling other people to not think so much and just be happy with whatever they get. One of the talking points coming out of the initial teaser trailer for Superman, for better or worse, was the fact that Superman flinched when he was hit with a can as he was surrounded by an angry mob of people.
S-O-F-T, soft, huh?
Now, for me personally, even being a highly critical person, I'd be lying to you if I said I even noticed this the first time around. But a lot of people, who other people like to say do nothing but nitpick everything, did call it out accordingly, saying that it is not consistent with what we know about the character of Superman. And it's true, Superman would not be fazed by this, let alone flinch by a can being thrown at him by a regular person. But if you said that when the teaser trailer came out, you were branded as toxic. You were branded as a negative person. You were told that you were just looking for reasons to hate this movie. Well, apparently someone at the studio, or someone in James Gunn's camp, or James Gunn himself, felt like it was important enough to address it. Because in the new trailer, miraculously, Superman does not flinch in that moment.
My, how the tables have turned.
And what does this tell us? It means that someone was listening. It means that someone involved with making this film felt like this was a good enough critique to actually address it and fix it by the next trailer. I'd really like to know how this sits with all the fanboys who like to act like this movie and many other movies are somehow above criticism. This is again yet another example of these fanboys being the real problem in this situation, because they literally can't take off their blinders long enough to see what everyone else is seeing. Now, will this tiny detail change the whole perception of this movie like the Sonic redesign did? Absolutely not. But it does prove a lot of people right who were previously told to shut up if they don't have anything nice to say. The moral of the story being, ignore the apologists, continue to tell your truth, because you never know who's listening.
Anybody care about what I want?
I do.
Shut up. Get out.
And I have to give the team behind Superman credit for listening, for paying attention to even the tiniest detail. A lot of studios wouldn't take the time to do anything about this. A lot of studios could benefit from recognizing that some fans do actually know what they're talking about. And sometimes those tiny details go a long way as it pertains to selling your product to the diehards. And since your goal should be to appeal to general audiences and diehards alike, I think it would be wise to listen to those fans who notice things a casual wouldn't. Criticism is not hate. Criticism can be helpful, and therefore criticism should be welcome and accepted by everyone. Now, do some people go too far out of their way to hate things? Absolutely. But there are a lot of people who get unjustifiably grouped in with those people who might actually have a lot more to offer in the way of constructive criticism.
Me, right?
As far as the trailer overall goes, my quick thoughts on it is that I still feel mostly indifferent to it. It still very much feels like a Superman movie, even more so now, where we've seen all of this in some capacity before. It still very much feels like an amalgamation of other Superman movies than it does its own unique thing. It feels like this movie would have been better suited to be a sequel or a continuation of a previous story, rather than a movie that is designed to kickstart an entire universe. In fact, it feels like we are getting dropped smack dab in the middle of an already established cinematic universe. And that's based purely on the sheer amount of characters involved, and to me that has the potential to feel bloated and quite frankly rushed when we ultimately watch the final product.
That makes sense.
I'm not overly impressed with the general look of the film either. I do think that it looks fine in some instances, but there are some what looks to be green screen shots that do look a little rough around the edges. I guess a lot of that is to be expected when you are using the same cinematographer that they had for the Flash movie. I will give them credit for one thing. I do think some of the CGI looks better than a lot of the other modern comic book movie CGI that we've been seeing lately. Which I think has a lot to do with the fact that they gave VFX artists a year to complete their work. I have to be honest, I'm still not 100% sold on David Corenswet as Superman. In a lot of ways, he does look the role, but it does kind of feel like one of those instances where he makes a better Clark Kent than he does a Superman. I just don't think he has the screen presence or the physique to pull off the Superman aspect of this character, and nothing in this trailer made me think otherwise.
Not impressed.
I did think that Lois Lane in this movie looks pretty on brand, so no complaints there. And I do think that there is potential with the Lex Luthor in this movie. I am kind of also interested to see what they do with Metamorpho, who looks to play a much bigger role in this movie than previously thought. But at the end of the day, this movie does feel like it has a lot going on, maybe too much. And if you mix that with the inevitable James Gunn gimmicks that we will be getting, this movie continues to be a hard sell for me.
Y'all be cool. Nah.